So if you've seen my last video, which, thank you, you would know that I don't like Diehard very much in this game. And so this video, we'll be going over how I homebrew a process of giving something a little bit more power level within the system, but still keeping its identity, to show different ways that you could possibly adjust things in your home games, and how I'm probably going to just diehard my home games in the future, but that'll come at the end. So first, I'd like to mention that this is going to use the process that I mentioned in my How to Homebrew video, and also my video on why I don't like Diehard. So I'm going to just put those two videos in the icon and let you figure that out. Anyway, getting right into it, Diehard, as a reminder, simply says you die from the dying condition at 5 rather than 4. And in that video, I go on why this feat doesn't do what you would want it to, which is make your character actually more survivable in a lot of cases. What it does do is it makes it your lower priority for healing, if a fight looks winnable, without you being healed. So, I want to adjust it in some way that makes it actually come up in fights in such a way that it can swing a fight, while still not being more powerful than a normal general feat. So, with that, let's get started with our first design that may be a little pushed. In this one, I'm going to tile Diehard with a Vengeance, because, as a reaction, frequency once per day, upon being knocked out, you can make one weapon strike. So, because of this, now there's a thing of, do you really want to knock me out? Because I'm not going to go down easy, which I feel fits the aesthetic of what I would believe Diehard should be, of, I'm not going to be going down without a fight, where what the Diehard we see does is, I don't mind if I'm on the ground. And I like this one because active, it's very clear how it swings a fight. However, the issue is that it may be a bit extremely overtuned, because usually, to get a reaction strike, it's normally like a level 6 feat for a class, and specific classes to get a reaction attack. Mind you, this is with a very easy trigger and no frequency requirement. So it might be more similar to something like Cracked Mountain, which is a once per hour frequency strike when you're getting knocked out. But also as you remain at 1 hit point, and blah blah blah. But a general feat should not really be giving so much power that can be compared to class feats easily. So as such, this is too powerful for a general feat, and we're going to need to try a different design direction. Oh, but I guess from also making Numb to Death, it would just be a level 7 general feat. General feat 7. Where it just says that Diehard is a frequency of once per hour instead. And I just leave it at that because Diehard is already very strong, so a synergistic ability that works on some characters, basically what I'd want from Numb to Death for this design. And if you want to implement this into your game, go for it. It'll probably make fights a lot more swingy. However, it'll be very interesting to see what players decide to do with Diehard, because you might have Barbarian running in at low HP, knowing that, but I'm going to get my hit off, and that's going to hurt. And I think that's a gameplay strategy that I want to encourage. So I do this to push that kind of gameplay style. So for this iteration Diehard, this comes from my research step in my homebrew guide video. And I researched, I found there are a lot of general feats that are just good against a specific type of thing. And that would be stuff like breath control, that gives you an advantage against suffocating and inhaled poisons, which doesn't come up often, but hey, useful to have. Things like fast recovery, which lets you gain more HP from resting and also makes you pretty good against poison. So if your game has a lot of insects that carry around poisons, fast recovery becomes very useful. Has stuff like Feather Step, where you can step in difficult terrain, which I mentioned being very good against attacks of opportunities inside of difficult terrain. There's also Super Taster, which I just thought I should bring it up as funny. You can read what it does, it doesn't matter. I've never seen it be used. It's just really funny. And that's, from the previous feed. So, I then decided to make my own version. In keeping with that tradition, I decided to make my own version of the Diehard feat that takes inspiration from those very specific types of general feats and have it give a situational bonus that feels on theme. Because this is leaning into Diehard's thing of, I don't want to lose my character, which is a big reason that people say in my comments in my previous video that I thought was a fair reason to take Diehard. It isn't exactly logical, but that is a valid reason to take the thing. I don't believe it to be the optimum way to play, but if you're really attached to your character, Diehard is more likely to keep them alive if you're losing a fight. Although I think you're more likely to keep them alive if you win your fights, but another story. So I'm just going to add a bonus to saving throws against death effects to this, so now there's a more of a niche situation where it becomes really good and can swing a fight. It's still niche, so you can keep all the old text there, and it barely ticks it up at all in terms of value, but bonus saving throws against death effects, such as the crit fail effect of something like a phantasmal killer or anything along those lines, can be really helpful for not having your character die. And if you're taking this feat because you want to keep your character alive, that then is another thing that helps you. It doesn't need to be big, it's just another little thing that says, I might swing a fight eventually, so if your campaign has quite a bit of this, you can use this to keep your character a little bit safer. Easy enough. Also, before I forget to give credit, the idea of having give bonus to death saves actually came from Ghost Yuki, who I was talking to about how I'd fix Diehard and then decided to turn to a video because I thought it'd be interesting. So, thank you. Also, as I was writing the next one, I had another idea for this one, and it's in the Numb to Death. You could have it also say, ignore temporary penalties from being resurrected, because a lot of resurrection spells will have you come back drained or whatever. And this line would have that stop, so you can immediately get right back into the game after getting resurrected. Again, playing to that theme of, I want to keep my character around for as long as possible. So, there you go. And now, we have the version I would do. Because I have seen a lot of players get very frustrated by the kind of death loops they get into, where they get healed, they get knocked back out, their wounded value ticks up, and they never get a chance to do anything, because they have to spend so long picking up their weapons again. And I've seen that be a very common frustration point for especially newer players to the system. Now, my advice is simply, just don't get knocked out, but that's along the lines of telling somebody who's new to your game to just get good, and then you won't have any issues with difficulty. Like, yeah, that's technically true, but that's not really a good piece of guidance towards new players. So I'd make Diehard do this, and that is, you keep a firm grip on life even when at death's door. You don't drop your weapons when you're knocked out. And I might change this to you don't drop your held items. So that way, casters can also use this. And this keeps it to be very general. A lot of characters would want the ability to keep on holding their things. This is particularly useful for dual wielders and shield characters, because a character that is wanting to do a shield and a sword would normally need to spend an action to pick each of those things back up, an action to stand, and oh boy, now they don't have a turn anymore. This would let them just stand up, and they're ready to go again. So, very, very strong in that niche scenario, but in that scenario, fights have already gone poorly for you. Things have already hit the fan. And I think that's where it's fair to have a feat be a bit more powerful in that scenario. Mind you, this might encourage the popcorn healing style game, however, Diehard doesn't exist to make that popcorn healing safer. So, now the play pattern is, I've healed this guy back up, they can stand up as one action, they can continue doing damage. And I think that's fair. Now, mind you, this is stepping on the toes of things like Quick Draw a little bit. And when you're looking at a feat like Quick Draw, its important thing is that you're drawing a weapon. Now, different GMs have different interpretations of what drawn means. The book defines it as drawing a stowed weapon. However, I have also seen people interpret it as draw any weapon that's around you. Because, I've also seen people interpret draw as, well, you just put hands on a weapon that is nearby. And that's drawing. I've seen a lot of interpretations of what that word means. And I think Quick Draw is still fine, because that's the thing, if you're walking around town, Quick Draw saves you an action at the start of combat. That's fair. This saves you an action after you get knocked down and then healed mid-fight, which shouldn't happen more than once anyway. So it's a general feat that maybe saves you one action, which is similar to what Fleet does. And I don't think it's as good as Fleet necessarily, but for some builds it might be a little bit better. But I think that if a lot of feats are competing for what is the best for my character early on, I think that's what makes the game most interesting in terms of builds. So I would really encourage you to do this version because it removes frustration points, which, fun little bonus of me going down this design path, and also is balanced within the system by occasionally saving an action, in a similar way to what Fleet does, but Fleet also gives us other versatility, but Diehard gives you more straightforward ways of getting the power, and I don't know, I think this is a cool implementation. And now, I just need to write the other feat for this. But honestly, thinking about it, I'm just going to go back to this version of Numb to Death that I designed earlier, because I just kind of like it. And for the design of this feat, it really makes a lot of sense. Because with this version of Numb to Death, you're still getting healed, so now you're at more HP when you're regaining it points and getting back up from Diehard. That boss music begins to play again, and then even if they kill you, you just come back. And I think that coming back and immediately being a threat is a really cool design space for a feat named Diehard. So, that's all I have for you today. Let me know if you liked this type of thing, and I might do more deep dives on things I do and don't like in this system in the future. With that, I'll see you on the next one. The screen is going dark. I need to learn to accept it.